There is a battle happening all around us, but it's not one we can see with our eyes. It's not just a struggle of circumstances or emotions. It's a war for our minds and our souls. The forces of darkness work not by overpowering us physically, but by planting seeds of doubt, fear, and confusion. The greatest danger is not the presence of these voices, but the fact that we engage with them. Too many people spend their lives wrestling with lies instead of standing firm in truth. The moment you recognize that the battle is spiritual, you begin to understand that arguing with darkness is a losing game. Every time you engage with the lies, you give them space in your life. The more you entertain fear, the more it grows. The more you debate with doubt, the stronger it becomes. The enemy doesn't need to defeat you if he can distract you. He knows that as long as he can keep you caught up in conversation, you won't move forward. You'll spend your energy defending yourself instead of living in the confidence of who you are meant to be. Fear, doubt, and guilt are not your advisors. They don't have the authority to dictate your future. Yet, many people take counsel from these voices as if they carry wisdom. When fear tells you to stay small, you listen. When guilt tells you you're not worthy, you believe it. But these voices are not the truth. Truth doesn't argue. It stands firm. Truth doesn't need to convince or negotiate. It simply is. The enemy's greatest strategy is distraction. If he can get you to argue, he's already won. But you don't owe him a conversation. You don't have to explain yourself to doubt. You don't have to prove yourself to fear. Instead of fighting on his terms, you need to declare what is true and refuse to entertain what is not. And you need to declare what is true and refuse to entertain what is not. Faith is not a debate, it's a decision. The moment you stop giving energy to lies, you take back control. When you refuse to argue, you silence the enemy. When you stand in truth, you stand in victory. The enemy works through deception, not power. He doesn't need to overpower you if he can convince you to fight on his terms. Every time you engage with a lie, you give it space to grow. Every time you respond to doubt, you validate its presence. Darkness thrives on attention, and the more you argue, the more you entangle yourself in its trap. You were never meant to fight battles that have already been won. You were never meant to entertain voices that have no authority over you. The moment you stop engaging, the chains begin to break. Lies only have power when you listen to them. Fear only has control when you give it your time. Guilt only weighs you down when you carry it instead of letting it go. The enemy wants you to believe that you have to argue, that you have to explain yourself, that you have to prove your worth. But the truth is, you don't owe an explanation to darkness. You don't have to convince fear that you are strong enough. You don't have to debate with doubt over whether you are worthy. Truth does not argue. It stands. It doesn't need validation. It simply is. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that your struggle is with the thoughts themselves. The real battle is in where you choose to place your focus. If you fight on the enemy's level, you will always be at a disadvantage. But if you stand on truth, you rise above the battle. The moment you stop trying to reason with fear and start declaring victory over it, everything changes. The moment you refuse to entertain doubt and instead step forward in faith, the enemy loses his grip. Faith is not about debating with lies. It's about standing firm in what you know is true. You don't need to prove yourself to your struggles. You need to walk away from them. When you stop engaging, you break free. When you refuse to argue, you disarm the enemy. Your victory is not in how well you fight, but in how firmly you stand. The battle is not won through struggle, but through surrender to truth. The greatest trick of the enemy is getting you to believe that you must fight on his terms. He doesn't come at you with open force. He comes with whispers, with doubt, with fear disguised as reason. He plants thoughts in your mind, waiting for you to respond, waiting for you to engage. The moment you start arguing, you've already given him an opening. He doesn't need to defeat you if he can distract you. He doesn't need to destroy you if he can exhaust you. The battle is not about winning an argument. It's about refusing to have it in the first place. The lies are powerless until you give them attention. Fear cannot hold you unless you allow it to take root. The more you engage with doubt, the stronger it becomes. The more you try to reason with your insecurities, the more tangled you become in them. Darkness does not need to overpower you. It only needs to keep you busy with unnecessary battles. But you were never meant to argue with demons. You were meant to walk in authority, to stand in truth, to move forward without hesitation. Truth does not explain itself to deception. Light does not negotiate with darkness. You do not have to prove your worth to fear. You do not have to justify your purpose to doubt. Every time you defend yourself against lies, you act as though they hold weight. But truth stands without defense. It does not need permission to exist. It does not need validation. The moment you stop engaging, you take away the enemy's power. The moment you refuse to argue, you silence the voice of deception. Victory is not in the struggle. It is in the stance. Faith does not wrestle with fear. It overrides it. Confidence does not negotiate with insecurity. It walks forward in boldness. You don't win by debating. You win by deciding. You don't overcome by engaging. You overcome by standing firm. The enemy's greatest weapon is distraction, but your greatest weapon is focus. The moment you refuse to argue, you take back control. The moment you reject the lies, you reclaim your power. You were never called to fight a losing battle. You were called to walk in victory. The enemy's greatest weapon is not force but deception. He knows he cannot take what is already yours, so he convinces you to surrender it. He plants seeds of doubt, hoping you will water them with your attention. He whispers lies, waiting for you to respond. The moment you engage, you step onto his battlefield, fighting a war that was never yours to fight. He doesn't need to defeat you if he can distract you. He doesn't need to overpower you if he can keep you questioning, hesitating, and second-guessing yourself. The most dangerous trap is not the one that binds you. It's the one that keeps you too occupied to walk free. Fear only controls those who give it a voice. Doubt only lingers when it is entertained. Guilt only holds power when you embrace it as truth. The enemy wins when you waste your energy arguing against lies instead of standing in truth. You do not owe an explanation to fear. You do not need to justify your faith to doubt. Every time you debate with deception, you make room for it in your life. But truth does not negotiate. Light does not ask darkness for permission to shine. There is power in silence. When you refuse to engage, you strip the enemy of his influence. When you stop justifying yourself to voices that were never meant to guide you, you reclaim your authority. Too many people spend their lives answering accusations that were never meant to be acknowledged. They try to prove their worth, argue against their fears, and convince themselves that they are strong enough. But real strength is not in fighting every battle. It is in knowing which ones to ignore. Victory is not found in the struggle, but in the stance. The strongest warriors are not those who engage in every fight, but those who know when to stand firm and refuse to be moved. You do not have to fight for what is already yours. You do not have to argue for the right to be who you were created to be. The moment you stop engaging with lies, you break their power. The moment you refuse to argue with demons, you rise above their reach. Darkness only has as much control as you allow. When you stop arguing, you start winning. The enemy does not come with chains, he comes with whispers. He knows he cannot take your destiny, so he tries to make you doubt it. He plants questions in your mind, hoping you will wrestle with them, hoping you will engage. The moment you start reasoning with lies, you give them weight. The moment you start defending yourself against fear, you acknowledge its authority. But fear has no power unless you feed it. Doubt has no voice unless you listen. Darkness has no control unless you open the door and invite it in. Too many people waste their strength fighting battles they were never meant to fight. They argue with fear instead of standing in faith. They defend their worth instead of knowing they are already enough. They negotiate with doubt instead of declaring the truth. But truth does not argue. It does not explain itself to deception. It does not need permission to exist. When you engage in conversation with the enemy, you lower yourself to his level. When you entertain lies, you empower them. But when you stand firm, when you refuse to engage, When you reject the invitation to debate, you take back your authority. The enemy's strategy is not destruction, it is distraction. He does not need to defeat you if he can keep you occupied. If he can keep you questioning yourself, doubting your path, and hesitating to move forward, then he has already won. The greatest battles are not the ones fought with force, but the ones that demand faith. You do not need to convince fear that you are strong enough. You do not need to persuade doubt to leave you alone. You simply need to decide that you will not engage. Victory does not come through struggle. It comes through surrender to truth. Faith does not fight battles it has already won. Light does not argue with darkness. It shines and darkness flees. The moment you stop defending yourself against lies, they lose their power. The moment you refuse to fight unnecessary battles, you find your peace. You were not created to live in a cycle of fear, doubt, and anxiety. You were created to stand, to walk, to move forward with confidence. The enemy has no power over you unless you give it to him. The moment you stop arguing, you reclaim your strength. The enemy doesn't need to take you down with force when he can do it with words. He whispers doubts, plants fears, and stirs insecurities, hoping you will listen, hoping you will argue. The moment you start explaining yourself to fear, it grows. The moment you start reasoning with doubt, it strengthens its grip. But fear is a liar, and doubt is a thief. They take what they were never meant to have, but only if you let them. The battle is not won by engaging with these voices, but by refusing to give them power. You don't have to fight a war that was never yours to begin with. Every time you argue with the enemy, you are playing by his rules. You are stepping into a battle that only serves to drain you. He wants you caught in endless debates, defending yourself against accusations that were never true. He wants you questioning your worth, explaining your faith, and proving what does not need to be proven. But truth does not explain itself. It stands unshaken. It does not need approval or validation. You don't have to convince the darkness that you belong in the light. You simply walk in it. Distraction is the enemy's greatest tactic. If he can keep you wrestling with lies, you won't have the energy to walk in truth. If he can keep you fighting unnecessary battles, you won't have the strength to claim your victory. The real test is not in how well you argue, it is in how well you stand. You don't win by debating with deception. You win by refusing to acknowledge it. When you stop giving your attention to the enemy's lies, they lose their hold. When you stop justifying yourself to fear, it fades away. Victory is not found in struggle, but in surrender to truth. The strongest warriors are not the ones who fight every battle, but the ones who know when to stand firm. Light does not need to convince darkness to leave, it simply shines. You don't need to prove your strength to fear. You simply walk forward. Learn to understand, the moment you stop engaging, you take back your authority. The moment you stop arguing with demons, you break free from their grip. Darkness has no power unless you grant it. The moment you stop fighting, you start winning. You were never meant to waste your strength battling voices that have no authority over you. Fear, doubt, and guilt only have power when you acknowledge them, but the moment you stop engaging, they lose their grip. The enemy's greatest weapon is distraction, keeping you trapped in endless arguments that drain your faith and weaken your resolve. But truth does not argue. Light does not negotiate with darkness. Victory does not come from struggle. It comes from standing firm. You don't have to fight for what is already yours. You don't have to justify your existence to lies. Walk in truth, refuse to entertain deception, and reclaim the power that has always belonged to you. Stop arguing with demons, and start living in the freedom that was meant for you.